Well, we kick off this morning taking a look at the Matlatla Commission, which announced that its hearings, initially set to begin on the 1st of September, will no longer commence on this date. And this is a result of delays in the procurement of essential infrastructure by the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Now, you will recall that the Commission was tasked with investigating criminality, political interference, and corruption within the criminal justice system. To unpack all of this, we are now joined by political analyst, Professor Sipho Seepe. Professor Sipho, good morning to you, sir. Welcome to the show. And as always, we do appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Yes, there was just so much that took place prior to the appointment of the Madlanga Commission, and the whole question surrounding investigating criminality, political interference, and corruption within the criminal justice system was right at the top of the agenda, Prof. And just now that we've learned now, there have been reasons given for why the commission cannot begin its work on 1st of September. What do you make of this? What is your reading into this, Prof?
I think we should read this within the context of how this government, starting from the president, deals with matters that are urgent and also matters that may end up being embarrassing. Sometimes we may look at this as a bungling when in effect it could be intentional. One must remember that the appointment of this commission came at a time when the country was on tenterhooks following a revelation that was very serious that implicates the entire criminal justice system, where it was pointed out or alleged by the Lieutenant General of the police that what we're dealing with here is involvement of the politicians, involvement of the senior members of the police with a certain crime syndicate, and that this web of intrigue that involves all these characters has a way of undermining the entire criminal justice system. And people were very eager. And instead of the president acting on it, decided to say, well, he'll do it differently. He'll come up with a commission. And people at that time gave the president what you may call, say, let's believe him. But now with this bungling, the people are going to be asking because they wanted answers then and then. And the answers were not going to be forthcoming. And he said, and people bought it to say, well, within 3 months, there'll be a first report. Now, with this bungling or this intentional behavior, where the infrastructure that is necessary for the commission to commence was not in place, people are now going to question whether the president or whether the department or government are all in cahoots to undermine the process, because there is actually a lot at stake. And one must also understand that here we're talking about the former minister or suspended minister or minister who's on leave, who has been implicated directly to be associated with people who are associated with somebody who's already now in jail. So what you're seeing here is a direct link. Now, the revelations also indicate beyond that that you also have a former minister who is also in this web or involved in this web of criminality or web of people who are said to be at the center of criminality and at the center of even some of the tenders that have been dodgy. So what we're dealing with here is something very serious, and you would have expected that the department would not drop the ball on this one.
Yes, Prof. And also, I think when the commission was initially announced and appointed, there was a lot of skepticism saying another commission, a lot more taxpayers' resources that will be committed to this commission. And when the announcement was initially made for the 1st of September, the department at that point in time said that the requirements would have been procured in time. Now, this is being used as an excuse for the delay once again.
Yeah, well, the manner in which these delays take place you can see it is almost choreographed. The choreography has more to do with finding time so that you can actually find a way in which you can explain yourself away from having to answer direct questions. And we must point out, because this seems to be also um, a temptation by us, not to link this to the Palapala matter. If you go back to when the president was asked a question from the get go, what is the source of this money? He immediately responded to say the money comes from the proceeds of a sale. And after that, the story started changing. And then he says, no, the whole thing must be subject to a process. And what he meant by the process is a series of enforcement agencies that were going to be participating in the investigation of this matter, were effectively saying, I'm not going to give you an answer. But we also know that the people that were at the head of those institutions were people who were appointed by him. So it came as no surprise for many of us that the outcome would be to exonerate them, to exonerate him, or some people to say they don't have sufficient information. And yet we also had a report came from luminaries in law, people who have former judges who came to say the president has a case to answer. So these delays are part of a mechanism to try to push the matter out of the public space, but also to find a way of recouping so that you can answer this behavior in such a way that it appears to exonerate those involved. But it would appear that as we proceed looking into this matter, the the plot thickens and more revelations are coming that are very damning.
Well, it certainly is. And also, I think just considering the history of many commissions that were appointed in the past as well. And once again, there is justification for the public and the country being suspicious as to these delays. And because once again, we are going to see a lot of delays. I think the commission was given about 3 months to come up with an interim report, and with these delays now taking place again, this again further creates or adds to a lot more suspicion, Prof.
No, definitely. We must accept that we've reached a stage where the president and this government has lost all forms of credibility and believability. When you have people who make promises and then pretend that they did not make those promises, and try to find a way of saying they never said so, this is what leads to the loss of credibility and believability. And then now we also have almost every character that has been brought into the out of the shade or the shadows. When they ask questions, they answer in a manner that it doesn't take long for them to be disproved to have been lying. You had the former minister or the minister in suspension claiming that he does not know somebody like, or he's not associated with somebody like Brown Mokhotsi, who was also the same person who was behind Cyril Ramaphosa's campaign to become a president. But later, when pressed, because there was now evidence, he then says, no, the person is a comrade. We now have Cele, the former minister, claiming that he has no relationship with Cat Matlatla, who is suspected to have been involved in dodgy deals that have to do with tenders, and also being accused of possible involvement in some assassination or planned assassination. So you have these issues. And then the former minister said, I do not know this person. And yet then we find out that he had been engaged in exchanges telephonically and also through text messages with the very same person that he says he does not know. So the question therefore arises, what is there to be believed in this that is said by this government, by the characters that are involved? So you see the same pattern. It will be denials that are later proved to be untrue. Secondly, it will be delays. so that the people can find time to find more plausible explanation for what appears to be devious conduct.
Also, Prof, when one looks at President Cyril Ramaphosa, he thinks commissions of inquiry may be the answer to uncover a lot that we are talking about. And we know that central to this were the dockets. And we've seen that explosive press briefing by by Mkonazi, who spoke about it and claimed that these dockets were taken away. They were under investigation and they were taken away by the task team, by the deputy police commissioner for crime detection at this point in time. Now, these obviously were very, very serious matters that came out of that press briefing. And once again, instead of acting immediately, another commission of inquiry, and that again, the point I had made earlier, that it appears that the president thinks that commissions of inquiry seem to be the only answer to get to the bottom and to find out what really has happened.
Well, the thing about the commissions of inquiry is that they are not places of investigating crime. They are there to try to understand what happened. And after the commissions will come up with its report, like we've seen the Zondo Commission. And what the Zondo Commission ultimately came up with were recommendations that can be taken or that can be challenged. So the commissions are ways in which you buy time, but you also make sure that you take the matter that is pressing, that there is in the eyes of the public, away from them, and to simply go through what you call a process. But that explains why Matlatla, as a chair of the commission in this matter, has decided to point out even before the Justice Department and the minister speaks, to simply say there has been delays, because he's trying to make sure that he is also not compromised, that he should not be blamed for lack of progress. So that is one thing about this. But at the same time, we must also know that commissions, if handled properly, can reveal a lot that is actually hidden. And in this case, we also have Parliament that is running also its own parallel process. So one sees a possibility of complementarity between the two processes, where the Parliament, using its power to subpoena, will call on individuals concerned, especially ministers and former ministers, to come and account, to explain all this web of intrigue that is associated with them. So, and you also have the journalists who are investigating, even though some of them have played a role of being the shielders of the current administration rather than to expose it. But you have media that remains independent that will also investigate. So I don't think this is a matter that can easily be controlled. You are going to see more information coming from almost every quarter, including people who are going to volunteer information.
Yes, Prof. And the fact that you're calling it a web of intrigue, and this was going to be, and I think you partly answered what I was going to ask next. And just looking at it from a parliamentary perspective, looking at it from a government's perspective, a government of national unity, the portfolio committee also with regard on justice and all of that. And it's going to be interesting to see how this actually plays out in a government of national unity, particularly not the ANC, but some of the other players who are a party to this government of national unity.
Oh, you're quite correct. We must remember that even before there was this government of national unity, one of the partners, a major partner like the Democratic Alliance, was very clear that when it came to the matter of Palapala, they can smell what they consider to be money laundering. And they actually had indicated that they were approaching or have approached the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the United States to investigate whether the monies that were found in the place of the current president were legit, and whether there isn't any criminality involved. But as soon as they were now partners of the GNU, they suspended that. So you can see how people use the information or suspend what they would have done under normal circumstances. That now that they've been brought in to be partners, suddenly this matter is no longer as serious as they made us to believe. If you are going to go and approach the FBI, you cannot do that unless you are convinced that there's an element of criminality. So this raises the issue: to what extent can the DA claim to be concerned about the rule of law and make sure that it does not protect the president, as the ANC has done during the Palapala hearing in Parliament, where they did not challenge the content of the report, but they made sure that they killed the report. So we must make it, and it's also disappointing that the media that always claimed to be concerned about transparency chose to quickly close that chapter instead of looking at the serious allegations that were found against the president and to highlight those, and so that they can link that to why Senzo Mkhunu decided to make the report on Palapala classified. Why in the country where you have the centerpiece of what democracy being transparency, and where you have a president says I'm innocent, why are you not making that report available? And how are you going to undermine the work, meticulous work that was done by the former Chief Justice Sandile Ngobo and the retired Judge Masipa, and also the senior counsel, to say, after looking at this meticulously, we have found the president to be possibly guilty of all the four areas that we're looking at.
Yes, but also, Prof, does this not again demonstrate to us the lack of leadership in a crisis situation, taking ownership of the problem? And earlier during the week, Dr. Naledi Pandor actually made a statement as well, where she was quite disillusioned with the leadership within the ANC as well. And, we are starting to see these cracks start to appear. But again, it's about taking responsibility, it's taking accountability, and showing true leadership to genuinely resolve an issue.
Well, there's no doubt that the country is on autopilot. For a long time, we've never had leadership. What we had is a president who thinks leadership simply means being on a podium and reading an iPad. What we need is leadership is not somebody who's obsessed with public relations exercises. And every time you see this president, it is always about the public relations exercise. It's never about decisions. It's always about avoiding taking decisions. It's always trying to delay everything, hoping that by the time his term comes, at least he would have come without having done anything. Because if he does anything, it would mean having to take measures against certain people, and those people may take him along with him if they go down.
Well, Prof, thank you very much for all of that and for your time with us this morning and for unpacking what you have. We always do appreciate you taking time out for us right here at Salam Media.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Professor Seepe joining us this morning once again. Inquiry delayed, integrity in question, and again, we see again another commission of inquiry. But also at this point in time, what we are going to starting to see is more fingers being pointed at President Cyril Ramaphosa, showing lack of leadership. And the key question here is what lies behind this web of intrigue? And that is going to be very, very interesting. And hopefully, this commission can actually get to work. And more importantly, the public and the country has the right to know as far as what is actually contained in all of those dockets. And with that, we're going to go for a quick break. We come back, and our focus will be on Zimbabwe. Vital HIV/AIDS cuts are now starting to threaten decades of progress in the country.